Welcome to our webinar, everyone. So my name is Vidyulata Prakash, and I head marketing at Ilantus. I would like to introduce our esteemed host for today, Mr. Gautam Dev. Gautam came on board at Ilantus in November 2020 as the Global Head for Product Services and Advisory. He brings in 25 plus years of deep experience in global cyber risk and security. Based out of Atlanta, Georgia, he has been a valued advisor in the cybersecurity space for over 2 decades and has played a central role in investigating severe cyber incidents. Gautam joined Ilantus from EY, where he played the crucial role of managing director, advising and assisting clients on matters of cybersecurity, EY cloud, and digital identity as a service. Prior to this, he was the founding venture leader for enterprise risk and security solutions at Cognizant, where he incubated and built Cognizant's enterprise risk and security solution, where he played a key role in achieving a 40% growth year on year. Prior to that, he was head of strategic initiatives at Wipro, where he was heading the enterprise application and data security services practice, involving multiple teams of security leaders, managers, and consultants. He has also held prominent roles in Satyam Computers, Deloitte, VeriSign, and Southwestern Bell Corporation, and played an indispensable role in providing application and data security solutions to organizations. Furthermore, Gautam is the founding principal of Alliance for Cyber Risk Governance, which is a global advisory community of industry experts providing cyber risk assurance standards and innovation. He's also the creator and founder of Intellicta, which provides a platform to help board of directors and senior management teams bridge the visibility gaps across their compliance, security, risk, and governance functions. Thank you so much, Gautam, for agreeing to be our host today. We are looking forward to learn from your expert insights. Today, our topic is passwordless authentication, the way forward for advanced cybersecurity. Over to you, Gautam.
Thanks, Vidyu, and a very good morning to all of you. And thanks for making it today to our series of webinars on zero trust based password authentication. So, my name is Gautam Dev. You heard enough about me. So, let's get started. A little bit about who we are to give you some idea of why we are speaking on this topic. We've been in industry for over 20 plus years, served about 1,000 plus clients with complex solutions integrating with multiple technology platforms. And over the past few years, about 5 or 7 years ago, we kind of ventured into creating this whole converged IAM realm where we created our own product called Compact Identity, which is based on the zero trust framework, includes the elements of passwordless authentication, which we're going to talk about today. With that, we got a number of recognitions down the road and down the years, mostly latest being from Gartner and KuppingerCole, CIO Review, Insight Success, and other analysts alike, where they've called us out as a market leader in the converged IAM space. We've also built significant amount of partnerships across the globe as we are a global company. And that includes both global system integrators and resellers, and also a lot of technology platforms, which we integrate with out of the box. All in all, that makes us a market leader in the converged IAM realm and providing identity-centric, zero trust-based, holistic cybersecurity services. What is compact identity? What do we mean when we say converged IAM? You'd see, you're familiar with, I believe, the identity and access management solutions out there, be it access management, single sign-on, identity provisioning, governance, analytics, all of these are privileged access management. But these are all separate installs. What we have done is through a single code base, given our clients the ability to provide all of these functionalities through a single code base. And not only that, it's the same code base on-prem and on cloud, which is again built on the zero trust framework to provide clients a secure way of transforming through the digital journey. So that's about compact identity. It's all in one. You don't have to procure 5 or 10 different technologies and install them one at a time. In our world, it's just the one code base, and you get all that functionality. Now, you might not want to use all of that functionality all at once. So we have a switch on, switch off model where you can switch off the ones that you don't want to begin with and switch on the ones that you do to switch on some of the modules that you did not require earlier. You don't need a separate install. It's already installed. Some of the leading analysts in industry recognition, Gartner has called us out as a leader and the only complete converged IAM suite out there, providing deeper governance than many other IAM suites. Ilantus, KuppingerCole Point of View, which are a leading analyst community in Europe, they've also said that we provide a broad feature set that is obviously continuously expanding, keep adding newer features and more cutting edge functionalities into our solution. One of which is this passwordless authentication, which we'll talk about. So again, multiple patents on these cutting edge functionalities, number of certifications, and so that's a little bit about us. We are global in nature, as you can see, our footprint on the right-hand side. Again, serving our clients for over 20 plus years, serviced over 10 million plus identities, 20 plus Fortune 100 customers, and we manage close to 2 million plus logins every day. Getting into the meat of the presentation, now that you have some understanding of who we are, where we are coming from. Zero trust and passwordless authentication being the topic for our conversation today. I don't know if you guys have been X-Files fans, but I had been, back in the day when X-Files was around. One of the core episodes in X-Files mentioned this one quote said by this one, an actor in the series called Deep Throat. And this was back in 2002. And the quote was, "Trust no one." And then we finally, after 18 or 19 years, have realized the fact that that is true to technology as well. So I thought it would be, kind of significant to understand, people understood the fact that you just don't blindly trust everyone, and you have to verify before you start, providing any sort of information to them. So then that brings us to, in that case, when we say, trust no one, what is zero trust security? I would like to call it do not trust, always verify for access and time. And what that means is, it's not the one time that you authenticate or authorize. There's also back end authentication and authorized based on the verified credentials that have been provided through a passwordless platform that can be, in the back end, be leveraged for repeated authentication and authorization for whatever someone is doing. And that's, kind of what I mean, always verify. A security model, obviously to establish zero trust and verification, you need a strict identity verification process. Again, like I said, you need to continually authenticate repeatedly and then only allow authenticated and authorized users and devices as such to access any kind of information in your environment. Again, the framework should be capable of protecting against advanced threats on the internet. So in a nutshell, to summarize zero trust security, a framework, I would just summarize it: do not trust, always verify for access in time. And that is core to establishing this, zero trust security. And this is one of my favorite cartoons. I've used it in some of my white papers as well. Why zero trust? Have you met Dave, right? Um, in your organization, you might have, all of the above: the firewalls, the encryption, the antivirus, CASBs of the world, the SIMs of the world. in the one corner, but on the other corner, you have Mr. Dave, who is nothing else but human error. So why zero trust? Just because of the fact that you have Dave in your organization, and just the one Dave can wreak havoc to all the expenses that you've made to secure your environment in all these above technologies. So I thought it was critical to kind of have start off with some humor, which is some relevant humor, and establish the fact why you need to not trust everyone blindly and always verify the fact that they are who they say they are and they are doing what they need to be doing and how they are doing it. And we'll see some of that in the next slide. So now, how do we counter? What is the disadvantage of having Dave? Most of the attacks, against the common norm, where we think the hackers are coming from the outside. Yeah, but how is the breach taking place? The breach is taking place by someone like Dave sitting on the inside, or that his credentials have been breached, or he's just been used bad judgment to kind of have sticky notes about for all his passwords on all the systems on his computer. He has a very bad social profiles, can be easily social engineered, and so on and so forth. The common norm is that everyone trusts traffic on the inside because I have built this secure infrastructure with all these firewalls and sundry, right? But that is not the case. The whole is someone like Dave, right? Or how a credential can be stolen in today's model of working. There are alternatives, they are not cheap. They're hard to deploy, operate, and debug, like your SDNs. And SDFs are inherently flawed as well. That's the reason why you need to build this micro perimeter of providing no trust or not trusting any incoming or outgoing communication blindly, but always validate. Some more on why zero trust. Obviously, these are some of the reasons why organizations no longer own their applications simply because a lot of organizations have starting using SaaS and PaaS solutions. So you don't have control on your own applications. Or I mean, you do from a point of view of administering them, but not from a point of view of securing breaches against them. And similarly, kind of adding on to that, now that everyone's moved to a SaaS platform, PaaS platform, or on the cloud, you are part of that whole big bad unsecured internet world, wherein you need to secure that micro perimeter with validation, verification at all times of who's accessing your information. Work from home these days is a really, really prominent feature, and therein again remote accesses and the time of access, the geography of access, the location of access rather, those are critical information that are kind of leveraged to create that no trust framework when you validate someone. So those would be part of someone's persona or profile that would be verified continuously as well. So what do we do to solve the problem of Dave? Which is insider threats. We need to get new technologies, new cutting edge technologies like passwordless authentication to solve this problem. And not just passwordless authentication, there are different flavors of it. You need unique technology providing passwordless authentication that not only believes in the fact that do not trust, verify in time for access. Dave, how do you Dave proof your environment? Right? So verified passwordless user persona, establish a verified, which is what I said in my first slide. You have to establish you have to establish verified access in time based on who, when, where, why, and how. And that becomes a part and parcel of every user's persona or which is continuously checked against or validated against when that user is performing any activity within your environment. So again, who, what, when, where, why, and how are critical to a user's persona to establish verified access. And then obviously identifying traffic moving across the organization in relation to protecting your surface. What that means is again, incoming, outgoing traffic. You validate it and the authenticity of it, of again when, for what, and why. Again, I've talked about this earlier. You have to create a micro perimeter around as close to the protection surface as possible because of to establish this zero trust, right? So you have this continuous, authentication, authorization in the background. It doesn't mean that the user is providing credentials or providing this passwordless mechanism at all time. This passwordless mechanism takes care of that for you in the back end when you have kind of authenticated with the factors that we will see in the coming slide of how we build our solution or how this cutting edge edge technology actually works. You can deploy segmentation gateways based on these microperimeters, most commonly known as your next generation firewalls. That would be another element to day proof your environment and get closer to a zero trust framework. And finally, but not least, you need to continuously monitor and maintain this persona in real time. Okay, so what is passwordless authentication? So diving into the other part of the meat and bones of today's conversation, right? As the name suggests, it's a no-brainer. Any authentication method that forgoes the use of passwords. Now we've kind of put together a quadrant over here to suggest, okay, four, covering four areas of concentration. Is it of high security? Is it convenient? Is it low security? Or is it inconvenient? And as you can see very well, while passwords are somewhat convenient, it's not that convenient because you do have to change them. You have to use complex passwords and then remember them. You have to change them every 30 days or 14 days based on your company's policy, but they are low security, right? They can be breached. The next factor is your multi-factor, passwords plus two-factor authentication through SMS OTPs or email OTPs, which again can be spoofed. It is a higher level of security. It is inconvenient, but it is a higher level of security. But at the end of the day, if you have no passwords, nothing to remember, you just have yourself as the authentication mechanism, then it's the most convenient and the highest level of security. And the way your persona is stored, right? And you will see when we go through the next few sections of the slides. So benefits of going passwordless. Benefits of going passwordless is again, let's break it down into the original code that I suggested. Do not trust. Validate the user as a live profile accessing the system or systems. So every time a user tries to log in, validate the user first. Always verify for access and tran. So all traffic is continually authenticated repeatedly. It's not that you have to keep providing your whatever form of credentials that passwordless, authentication leverages. In our world, let me just, kind of get to it rather than holding on. Otherwise, it starts to become confusing. We use the blockchain technology. So when I say you're creating a persona is a block stored and encrypted and stored with the user itself, right? So you are using your live ID, your face ID, or your touch ID as a means to authenticate. So touch ID obviously being touch ID, but otherwise it's a totally touchless, passwordless exercise. What we mean by live ID is unlike other face ID features where you could probably get in through a photograph or anyone sleeping or passed out. Kind of put the camera on him and log in using his profile. A live ID or live ID profile is where you actually blink, you smile, you move your face, so the system knows that it is you and you're live, and no one's kind of trying to emulate you, right? And that's stored in a block, which is encrypted and using the blockchain technology. So that makes it perfectly secure and immutable. And that then, once you've authenticated yourself once, the technology takes over in the back end and continually authenticates you repeatedly and verifies based on the credentials from the block that you provided. Improved security, no more sticky notes for Dave. The most common attack vector is stealing passwords through phishing or human error will be eliminated because of that fact. Great user experience, ease of access, improving efficiency and productivity, because you don't have to call the help desk every 14 or 13 days when it's time to update your complex password combinations. You don't have to remember 50 different passwords for 50 different systems, all complex, hence the sticky notes. Threat resistant login options. So because there are no passwords, the likelihood of being phished does not exist. Scalability. In this factor of scalability, what we're saying is every employee, customer, or user type that an organization has accessing their information either has a mobile device, a laptop, or something like that. So that way you could quickly enhance the ability to onboard users without having to, kind of provision passwords, manage passwords, call the help desk, create new passwords, create new credentials. Uh, so that's what we mean by scalability here. Lowers the total cost of ownership because it does reduce help desk costs with people not having to call to say, hey, I forgot my password or I'm locked out of my account. And that allows for, with this technology, the passwordless technology, that eliminates all the costs that are associated with that kind of function with the help desk. Long-term ROI. Like I said, when I was talking about the TCO and above, reduction in extensive spend on operations for password management, right? Password syncing, password provisioning. So the technology pays for itself, in a way, right? So because you reduce all of those expenses, be it the help desk, be it the password management cost, or anything significant. So then doubling up, right? We talked about no trust, always verify for access in time. So all traffic is authenticated over and over again. No connection inward or outward is implicitly permitted, whether from within or outside the network. That's kind of straightforward, and I've talked about that earlier as well. Passwords, though, if you establish a zero trust framework, you still go by credentials and passwords. You still will introduce significant amount of friction and security complexity. They would, reduce the effectiveness of your zero trust framework considerably. So it's important, if you really want to establish a true never trust network or framework, that you use a technology that helps benefit, helps the framework to benefit from it and enhance that never trust and always verify fundamental even better, and that is where passwordless authentication comes into play. Some of the benefits being it is the highest level of assurance and visibility, because you are validating the user before you're registering it, and we'll see some of the forms of how you register a user, be it through your corporate identification your passports, your driver's license, or anything else. And then again, since you created a vault for yourself, I mean, you could carry that vault with you. You could go to a hospital and with the same zero trust framework, be able to authenticate yourself and provide your information willingly rather than having to sign 50 HIPAA forms. And it also encourages, like, this is a repeat because this is a real critical factor for zero trust frameworks is continuous authorization and authentication. Authentication is no longer a one-time event. It's happening throughout your digital life cycle of experience. To further enhance the passwordless authentication environment, our solution also includes another factor of certificate-based authentication, which further intensifies the lowering or reduction of the level of risk that you face. This is kind of a money slide, right? Why? On the left-hand side, what we're saying, three kinds of authentication factors, as we saw in that quadrant as well, we are aware of. One is your passwords, straightforward security question, challenge phrases, usernames. The other is your SMS. What you have is your SMS OTPs, key fobs, hard tokens, soft tokens, and then finally biometrics. What could be your option A? Option A would be a combination of passwords with MFA. Option B would be which is biometrics, but again, along with, so you provide but you also provide your credentials. It's limited by the same weakness. As long as passwords are involved, you are still weak from a point of view of establishing a zero trust framework. Option C is a combination of multi-factor, be it through certificates, as we saw in the last slide, as well as some form of biometrics. In our case, it's live ID. And so the best and recommended option would be C, where you leverage the passwordless authentication technique to authenticate as well as store your persona, and then kind of have another factor such as certificate-based authentication to enhance your no trust framework. Now getting into introducing thoroughly our passwordless authentication solution. Hey, so in the old days, I'm sure you guys have heard of knowledge-based authentication, right? And knowledge is about an identity, from some ways or means. So we have extended that fundamental, right? So basically, passwordless moves is too highly usable. So in the sense, when we say validate a user before creating a block for him or persona for him, so it's based on the knowledge that that individual is who he says he or she is. Essentially, by means of any kind of identification, government issued identification, your passports, your driver's license, even your corporate identifier, the hard tokens, the smart cards, or so on and so forth. So based on that, and a memorized secret. So essentially, kind of when you create your persona, it's not only encrypted, but it's also, kind of protected by a PIN or a password. Or I don't should say password, but a memorized secret, right? So which is a PIN. So that way you're completely secure and you hold this information on your own device. So the whole GDPR equation goes out of the door. The CCPAs of the world, the GDPRs out of the world, right? Wherein everyone should know what they're doing with their data because you're holding your data and you providing access to it when someone requires it, right? So it's selective, provision of your information to authenticate, or if, like I gave the example of a hospital, right? To share your information with them, so rather than having to fill it all up. And then combine that with advanced biometrics, decentralized identification, which is your blockchain technology. In this disputable identity proofing, which is creating your persona based on this validation of your identifiers, passwords, digital identities, or your driver's license and so forth and so forth, and then be able to sort of verify ongoing that it is you who is trying to access this information, and also you know add another level of factor, uh, like I mentioned, certificate based authentication or hard tokens or anything else. So that's again and this graph basically says, okay, where are you strongest, weakest, simple, and complex from a usability and security point of view. So kind of if you just go by knowledge based authentication like the old times, it's simple but it's weak, right? You need to enhance it with other factors, and being able to leverage. So not just based on, okay, I have enough knowledge of this guy to trust him. But no, I have enough knowledge of this guy and I store it in an encrypted block, which will then be validated based on his live ID. Redefining digital identity, right? So attribute enrollment. This is when you enroll your digital identity, your persona, right? So through biometrics, your corporate identity, your government issued documents, your bank or telco identity. So again, you could take your persona, and if the bank so uses the same framework, you could leverage that to even log on to your bank. So it's a universal identity, and we call it Ilantus ID. And then obviously you encrypt everything with your own private key, which you are the owner of. Biometric authentication, again through Face ID, Live ID. If you see the last two images there, it's basically saying shake your head, move it around, smile, kind of nod before your authentication, built-in MFA, or again, you know, voice ID or touch ID. Verify credentials. Which is basically, now that you have created a persona, you need to verify those credentials, and that is primarily done through some form of biometric authentication and then mapping of, uh, your credentials to that biometric persona. How is it stored? It is stored using blockchain, which are immutable transactions, as you know. They're private. It's a distributed ledger, just like a block for those who understand how blockchain works. A distributed ledger, and is a decentralized identity. So if you were to lose your phone today, which has your identity, you can simply, when you get a new phone, download the app, verify yourself through biometrics, and it would put on your wallet onto your or vault onto this new device, and you can also disable the old device, because they won't be able to even use the old device because they don't have your face, they just have your phone. So that's another critical capability, and that's kind of around about 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. And as you can see, the way we've done this is we've kind of leveraged comprehensive control mapping to each one of these actions from the industry, and then kind of getting into a little bit of more definition for whatever I just said. Building the persona block, which is your building, the credential attributes, creates a credential safe, which is on your own, on your own device. It's with you, and it adheres to NIST and Identity Assurance Level 3. It helps against detecting fraudulent enrollments, duplicate enrollments, and establishes or reestablishes credential binding into the whole blockchain. Biometric authentications, advanced like liveness test, like I said, live ID. You'll have to smile, you'll have to nod. However, the policy is configured instead of a username and password. It provides high level of confidence that the claimant is who he says he is or she is. And there's an AAL3, which is the highest level of assurance, is based on the proof of possession of a key, which is your private key, and this form of biometric, which is what we built in. Verifiable persona credentials. So you can share your verifiable credentials with third parties, like I said, hospitals, banks, wherever it is, right? And still be able to access your information through that. And these are tamper evident credentials because, again, they are protected by the whole blockchain technology. They are encrypted and it's distributed and can be cryptographically verified just as you do in an SSL transaction. The only difference being here you have a client certificate, where in SSL, client certificates are not mandatory. And then the whole fact that it is a decentralized ledger. So while you own your own identity, it gets consolidated across your network of blockchain as a decentralized ledger. So which is the reason why if you lose your phone, you could quickly port that information into your new vault on your new phone. So typical use cases, know your customer from a customer onboarding point of view, because you would be able to validate them from their persona stored in the blockchain. Secure building, you could unify physical and logical access into one identity. uh, Company network credentials can be also part of the persona or the block. You could use your block as an universal login, as we said, banking and other websites. You could restrict video streaming. So part of the persona could be, okay, this identity or this persona, this block can only stream such amount of data. You could use it also moving forward for your as a digital passport, because it has all the information. So in due course, if this proliferates, that would be another prominent use case where airport aircraft access could be just through this block of your persona that you could validate yourself against. Same goes for EMR and any clinical or COVID test results that could be stored on your block itself. E-commerce or other payment authorizations, so your PayPal or PayPal's of the world, or any kind of ACH transaction, you should be able to leverage the same uh, mechanism for it. This is pretty straightforward. You log in with your biometric. It is logged for access again in the private blockchain, so it's immutable. So you can't deny the fact, it's non-reputable. So you can't deny the fact that you did not log in. And then based on all the policies and criteria, you are granted the access permission to access that information that you are trying to access. And then this whole block of persona, or this whole framework, we call it as an Ilantus ID framework, which is built on the zero trust framework and blockchain. And the not trust framework goes beyond. So it's not just about validating identities. You also need to validate applications or OS and devices, right? Case in point, SolarWinds. So passwordless will seamlessly protect network data access, multiple deployment options. It could be standalone, or it could be part of the whole compact identity suite, where not only do you use passwordless authentication as a factor for access management, but also where we can quickly help you register and provision these persona attributes to any other applications, and even be able to govern the access audits versus and certify those accesses over time and also provide privileged access management on top of that. So when I say devices as well, so it could provide authentication of the device itself. So reverse the case, right? So the authentication, the device itself could have a block for itself. Same thing goes for an application and the OS. To check the authenticity of the OS. Check if the device has been jailbroken, if the biometric security has been enabled, and only then allow the user to authenticate and validate themselves against the application. So validate the application, validate the user, and then have them authenticate to that application, which was not the case with the SolarWinds upgrades. So key features summarized, 100% compliant with authentication technologies, comes with an SDK for easy customization, integrations, combines ease of use and enhanced security. Ease of use again, because don't need to remember passwords or a number of passwords. Users capture their face, voice, and fingerprints on a secure mode as supported by blockchain. Out of the box integration for all platforms. And then finally, my favorite cartoon. And then the winner is passwordless, no trust framework. So that ends the presentation. I do want to go through a few screenshots here with you to show how the whole thing is in action. So essentially solution components being your mobile authenticator, which you use to scan and obtain access through biometrics and other forms, which kind of deals with your identity gateway on-prem or SaaS, which is kind of communicating with the private blockchain ledger, which is kind of built on a secure storage. Again, fully encrypted. It also synchronizes with your Active Directory and other accounts. And then we use the QR code or push message to replace use of password challenges, and certificate-based authentication is another factor. So talk about this in the next few slides. So with compact identity, if you see when you log in, right, when you get to the login page or trying to access any resource, you would get, in this case, the client went for, okay, I still want to, for a little bit of a time till the people get used to passwordless, want to go with credentials. But you see the QR code here. With your app, you scan the QR code and bang, you're in, because you've already registered, and I'll show you how you register. And then once you are in, you'll see your whole app portfolio, and it's all single signed on with compact identity, single sign-on feature, and you click on whichever app you need to access. The other important feature is compact identity can act as an identity provider. So someone like Salesforce, you have an integration with, can say login using compact identity, passwordless auth, and it will, as a service provider, it will then go to compact identities, a login page, you do your passwordless authentication. It will then get you back to Salesforce and login. Now, we also provide the same functionality for desktop logins, where on the desktop itself, you can provide passwordless authentication and you log in and you logged into your network as well. So that's about it from the presentation. What would be the actions and timings? So decide on 1,000 users. We will install Ilantus ID in parallel to use your legacy username and password, integrate with your SSO, or we could bring our own SSO, integrate with your Windows, try the solution for 3 months, and watch your help desk calls reduce. Then decide how you want to expand your password journey. So at the moment that there is a 3-month POC that we have enabled for up to 1,000 users in your environment. And if you're interested, please feel free to reach out. That email address, inquiry@alantus.com.
So what does it take to implement passwordless authentication?
Basically nothing. The process is really quick and easy and can be completed in a couple of hours. It does not take weeks or months. And like I said, with a whole Converged IAM installation, fundamental, it's a single install, right? And for both cloud and on-prem. So not more than a couple of hours.
Okay, next question. What is the licensing model for Ilantus ID?
So the licensing model is subscription based. It varies on user type, right? So whether it's a workforce, your internal employees, consumers, which is licensed lower, and the number of identity verification features that the organization would like to implement. And again, like I said, currently we have a passwordless identity pilot for 3 months for up to 100,000 users. That is production ready if anyone's interested.
With passwordless dealing with biometric data, how can privacy concerns be addressed?
So that's simple. I mean, I think I addressed that when I was going through the presentation. The very nature of the blockchain prevents any sort of tampering and discourages attacks that are common on central standard, identity databases. And then you are the owner of your uh, identity and your persona, which is fully encrypted. And with the block ID blockchain, the information is encrypted with their own unique private key and secured on their own mobile device. I mean, thousands of separate and unique encryption keys and mobile devices protect the identity data and this whole immutable ledger, which makes it completely impossible for hacking.
What is the user experience if an end customer does not want to scan government issued IDs like driver's license or passport?
Passwordless can work in tandem with the existing environment as well. So it's not just about your government issue ID, right? It is you could use your corporate IDs or however we can validate the user to be who he says or he or she says, right? I mean, and there are a number of means to do that. So that's the core ask here. So the user experience is customizable, literally, and flexible to provide authentication levels that the customer requires. So if an existing customer just wants to add password, it can be plugged into the existing workflow as well. There is a requirement for opening an account, applying for a loan, high risk transactions. We can add document verification into the process, but it is not a requirement. It would be more secure from a validation point of view if we do have these means of identifying the user before creating the chain, because it will solve the purpose. So anywhere they go, they could reuse this wallet for that sake. But if they don't want it, there are other ways and means to kind of validate and create the block, a persona block for them.
What are the cumulative solutions Ilantus provides along with passwordless?
Yeah, so as you saw when we talked about this converged IAM image that I shared, and so I mean this is all in one. So be it authentication, including passwordless authentication, and then if you go with credentials, we do provide password management, access management, identity administration, governance, analytics, and privileged access management, all out of a single code base. So if you want it, you can switch it on. If you don't want it, you switch it off. Whenever you want it, you switch it on. No other installation required. And if you're moving from on-prem to cloud, we just do a lift and shift. Obviously, there'll be some amount of services cost associated with the lift and shift, but not as much as installing a totally new solution from scratch.
Thank you, Gautam. We had a few more questions, but I think we're out of time. We will be happy to answer them over email. Please feel free to send out any more questions to inquiry@ilantus.com and we'll be happy to take them up.
Right. And thank you all for joining again today. And then do look at that this final slide. where we talk about if you're interested in, if your organization is interested in a 3-month POC and see the benefit of it for up to 1,000 users, decide on the 1,000 users, and we'll come install. And like I said, it's a 2 hour affair. We can integrate with your SSO or with using a compact identity module as well, and integrate with Windows and show you the powerful, the factor that we've built. Thanks for joining. Hope this was productive. Send us your feedbacks as well, or any other questions you might have to that email address. And if you're interested in the pilot, please let us know as well. Thanks, and have a great day.
Thank you,
Cheers.
everyone, and thank you, Gautam, for this insightful presentation.